Hello, everybody. I hope the apocalypse is treating you well. We've got another rare treat for you and a special guest tonight. We have 1,000 Eyes, Bryce Johnson, winner of the Battle for Hoth Italian Tabletop Simulator tournament, joining us this evening to talk about his list in the tournament. Nice to meet you, Bryce.
Hello, lovely to meet you too.
Of course, the proper first question is: I can see you're running a Starhawk, but is Rebels your favorite faction? Are you being swayed by any of the new factions?
Yeah, so I historically in games I like playing the good guys. So back when there was only two factions in playing Armada, I was like, well, I'm playing Rebels, obviously. And they're probably still my favorite faction, but the more separatist stuff comes out, I'm real interested because their ships are cool as hell. Like I just like the Recusant. I think is such an interesting design for a big ship. And I'm really looking forward to actually like now the tournament's over. I may actually have some time to get some casual games and stuff, and hopefully play some separatists because they look awesome.
Yeah, I've tried out Grievous with one of those ships, and or you've played against it actually in the Dagobah thing, and it is great fun when you remember to nav at the right time and don't just run into an MC-80 side arc. Um,
Yeah. That's a bad plan. Don't run into the side arc of an Akbar Defiance. Like,
yeah,
yeah, I did try like one game. I tried like two or three games of Republic, but I was running like acclimators, and I like being able to turn.
yeah.
And so I just, yeah, I kind of went off Republic based on that. I might give them another look at some point, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, like that silver guy, that silver clone, it seems like the greatest brake man in the world, which is probably what you need with acclimators. Because it's like, I can go speed three, I can go speed three, and then turn three. Oh my god, I'm going speed three, and I can't turn, even though I have a nav command. I'm going off the board.
yeah, yeah. It's horrible. Like, they've got the turning circle of like a very large bus, and I'm just like, this is a medium ship, guys. Come on, like, come on. Especially when I'm used to Rebels, where everything like the Starhawk turns better than an acclimator.
Yep.
Like, come on. Like,
And there's not even a support slot or anything to kind of help mitigate that in any way. Like maybe with entrapment formation on a Venator. Uh,
maybe
Not entrapment.
like
Take evasive action might help.
yeah. Is that the one? I think possibly, but the thing that got me about playing was that it felt like Bale was there. Bale wasn't really as much of a benefit as he was just making your ships able to turn normally.
Yep.
He's just smoothing out the big weakness and not actually. It felt like because of that, it wasn't providing anything. But again, I am very biased because I have predominantly only played Rebels. I've played like three or four games. I've played no, not even. I've played two or three games of Separatists ever, and so I'm very. And they're also pretty mobile, right? So
Yep.
I have a real love for ships that can actually turn unaided.
And yeah, the separatists can just turn themselves into knots, to be honest.
Yeah, it's
And
gorgeous.
the hard cell seems to be a good kind of compromise between a Nebulon and a CR90. Um, like with just a better defense token suite than both of them put together, which is nice. Um,
I think so. Yeah, like I think hard cells are really really cool, but one thing I feel about both Republic and Separatists is that I hope like I hope they're gonna get flotillas at some point because flotillas provide an option they're that those two factions just don't have at the minute, right? Like sometimes you just want a 20 or 25 point activation to push some squadrons. And a lot of the time with list building for sets in Republic, I end up with like awkward like points where I'm like, I kind of already have as many squadrons as I want, and I
yeah,
can't really push them all effectively. So I would love like a 22 point flotilla to just push some squadrons here. But yeah, I don't know. That we'll see. I guess like
yeah.
they're obviously in their infancy, so
And the peltas, I think the peltas are going to help a lot. The peltas are very low cost for what they do.
Yeah,
Um,
what are they like 45 for a medical
49
pellet or
and
something?
45, I think, yeah. Um,
Yeah, 45 is very cheap for that amount of like shields, hull, and
decent
general.
defensively,
Like
yeah.
it's not horrible offensively. Like
I think they've
yeah,
the two red in the rear as well, so you throw reactive gunners on some of those, and they're throwing 4 red dice if they get shot at in a turn, which is not too bad.
yeah,
Um,
like that could be kind of cute. I think.
I'm,
Um,
I think giving them an offensive retrofit slot as well for bringing back the torrents, um, and fleet support, they're going to do a lot.
yeah, yeah, and they have. I think part of the reason they're going to have a they have a very cheap base cost for the chassis is because like a lot of the time you're going to want to stick a bunch of relatively expensive upgrades on there, and they're going to cut. They're not going to end up that cheap. I think. I don't know. I've not like so with the pre-release stuff. I'm like mostly just trying to avoid it because I don't like going, oh well, this is this and this is this,
Yep.
and maybe this can go together. And I'm like, yeah, but maybe there's like one upgrade card in the Pelta box that is going to change everything that we're thinking.
Yeah, like
So
there's
I
still
try,
another admiral as well, isn't there?
yeah, maybe I don't know, but I just try not to worry too much about unreleased stuff. I'm like,
Yep.
when it comes out at that point, I'll start. When it comes out at that point, I'll start actually like list building and theory crafting and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and I think I've said this before. Like even the rebellion and the rim objectives, I don't think they've been fully explored by most people. So there's stuff
I
from 2 years ago that probably still you can look into if you're.
I think too many of the rebellion and the rim objectives are a little bit like so with an objective like most wanted, right? It's
Hmm.
absolutely no effort and you know what you're getting out of it. You get
Yep.
100% of whatever you get out of it for essentially 0% effort. Whereas it feels like a lot of the rebellion and the rim objectives, you kind of have to do this weird Rube Goldberg shit and do all your, plan it all and make it all work perfectly in order to
Hmm.
get the same result, like 100%. Maybe you get like 105% of what most wanted would give you. Whereas, like, you have to put in so much more effort in the first place. It's not really worth the amount of effort when you can just very easily chuck in a contested outpost or a most wanted or whatever.
Yeah, like I think the infested fields and the asteroid tactics though kind of book that trend a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Those are super strong objectives. Like, those are incredibly strong objectives, particularly because Ramadi, well, particularly how I've seen it is because Ramadi is really good now, and it's like,
Hmm.
hey, yeah, do you want to be able to move? Do you want to be able to bring objectives that mitigate the general weakness of like a lot of Ramadi lists that are built to take advantage of like the maximum number of extra red dice you get? They don't tend to run a ton of squadrons, and so both of those have the what do you call them,
Exogorths.
the Exogorths. That kind of mitigates that weakness a little bit, and also you get to move terrain around. And in the case of asteroid tactics, you get to just set up the perfect terrain for you, which as Rumodi is really really strong. Like
Yeah, and I think I actually prefer like infested fields just because of the ability to put an asteroid in front of somebody as they're moving
mhm,
is
mhm.
crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, like with without those two exceptions, then every other objective seems. I think the correct word is finicky. Um,
Yeah, like Doom Station was in the list that I used to win I won the tournament with, but it's very much in there because there's literally no other blue objective that said that I just wanted a second copy of Contested Outpost is what I wanted.
yeah, well, Doom
I
Station is
couldn't.
like a contested outpost which still heals you and follows you, which is kind of nice.
It's sort of. It's also a lot more finicky because you have to be planning where it's going to go and like, are you going to try and block it in? Is it going to move? Like, can you stop it moving? Um, and like the main thing I dislike about Doom Station, honestly, is
Mm-hmm.
that playing Doom Station adds like 20 minutes to any game it's in because you have to be really finicky and like check all the measuring terrain at the end, like ships and squadrons in the way, and you have to move it all, and it just adds a lot of time and finickiness to the game. Um, but it's fine as a third objective when I had nothing else to take in that slot, realistically.
Yeah, at least it's not as bad as navigation hazards. It feels
It's
like some of
What
the
one's navigation hazard? Hold on, I'm gonna look that up. I'm gonna go on Warlord to look that up because
that is
I've
the one
oh,
where each of you put an objective, move something, then put an objective token on it. It's from Rebellion in the Rim.
I yeah. Yeah, that seems like a bit of a pain. Like I tend to also prefer simpler objectives because there's less chance I can screw up.
Which is
The same reason I like
always,
the Starhawk actually. Like the less mistakes you can let yourself, the less opportunities you can give yourself to make a mistake, the better.
and the Starhawk just gives your opponents opportunities to make mistakes realistically, because
Yeah,
it's
like the
just such
Starhawk
a
is a it's just a big ball of stats, right? Like
yep.
it just sits there and says, do you have an answer to this? And unless you fly very badly with a Starhawk, even if you lose, probably they're just going to kill everything else and not the Starhawk, and it's going to be like at worst a 7-4 in their favor, unless they're running double onager, which I've never played, but it seems like a truly horrific matchup.
And yeah, I mean it just the Starhawk is just so kind of
It's very
so
forgiving.
concentrated, and it moves
It's
far better than it has any right to. And I think both of the
Yeah,
Wave 8 chips have that going for them.
yeah. They just have better nav charts than they have any right to. For me, the Starhawk is a little bit like it's very forgiving because it's just it has redundancies for everything and it just hits very hard. It turns like a rebel ship, but it has the front arc of an imperial ship, and it's kind of almost I guess like the Space Marines of Armada, where like in 40k Space Marines are they just have good stats and they're just kind of good at everything,
Yep.
and the Starhawk's a little bit like that. Like the only thing it doesn't have is the ability to go beyond speed 3 and to go beyond speed 2. Sorry, and a lot of the time that doesn't matter that much.
Yeah. It just, particularly with the objectives being able to kind of force you into doing something, and generally like the if you have, it's the same as it's kind of like a mini SSD without the whole not having anything left after it.
Yeah,
Um,
I would say like the SSD is essentially has all of the Starhawk's strengths and weaknesses magnified times by 10.
which
Like
which I suppose is appropriate considering they were direct foes, but
yeah,
it's
yeah,
just that I don't think the SSD you kind of compromise too much to bring it in terms of points costs, whereas the Starhawk
yeah.
not so much.
I think so. Like both the Starhawk and the SSD also have the same problem of so there's a term we sometimes used to use in War Machine called outplay potential, which is if you're better than your opponent, how much does your list give you the ability to outplay them? And both the Starhawk and the SSD have relatively little outplay potential. Like they're kind of just a big ball of stats that sits there,
Hmm.
and you know roughly where it's going to be every turn, and you know where its arcs are, and it's a challenge to come and hit it, right? But it can't it can't often surprise the opponent. It can't do like some funky thing that makes your opponent go like, "Oh damn, I didn't see that coming."
Particularly when it
Um,
has Jar Jar at the helm.
Yeah, like to be fair, the SSD has a little bit of that because of Georgerod, and like the Starhawk has Magnites, which do a similar thing,
Yep.
and they provide that little bit of extra outplay potential. But overall, it is a big weakness of the list, and I think particularly for the SSD, it's it's another term for War Machine is a mid-table smasher. So it's something that absolutely dominates at like lower and sort of mid levels of play, but at the top levels of competitive play, people have the answers and know how to abuse the weaknesses of the SSD.
Yep.
Is my sort of analysis of it.
But so I suppose with all the talk of the Starhawk, do you want to talk about your list and how it came together?
Yeah. So, I mean, do you want to? How specific do you want me to get? Do you want to run? I mean, I guess are you going to put up a picture of the list in the
So the
background of
picture,
this? So I
because
don't
we're
need
having
to.
some camera issues, the picture of the list has been here all the time. Um, and it'll be linked down below in the description. But I suppose
Well,
this is the thing. There's a number of standard things with your Starhawk, with Agate, Unity, Welex, Blissix, Expert Shieldtex, Link Turbo. Actually, this seems very standard,
yeah.
except the choice of Magnites or no Magnites. That's really kind of, and whether to go the Mark 1 or Mark 2. Those are, I suppose,
So,
the kind of big choices you really need to make about a Starhawk list. Or,
so for me, I so as for the Mark One versus the Mark Two, I don't see that as a choice. Quite frankly, the Mark One is more than 10 points worse for everything the Starhawk wants to do. It's because it's very slow. Um,
Mhm.
more long range fire is better than more close range fire, and flak being red blue instead of what's the Starhawk One flak? Is it
I think it's a
black
blue and a
blue?
black.
Yeah, like
It doesn't have red flak. That's the main thing.
yeah, the being able to reach out with that red flag is sometimes very relevant, and also just there's a double on there, and you've got LTTs, and you're gonna be putting LTTs on it anyway, and so why not get more rerolls? Because you're the black dice you gain over the red on the Mark One is shorter range, so obviously it's gonna happen less often, and also a red dice with LTTs, which is going to be on the thing anyway, about as accurate as a black dice. I think I've not done the math on it. Don't shout at me, math nerds. Um, yeah, no, I don't see it as a choice. I just think the Mark II is basically superior because it does all of the things that you want the Starhawk to do better. So why save 10 points, which is ultimately not an amount of points that's going to matter? And
Exactly.
Unity is, I am, in my opinion, the best title anyway. So,
Yeah, and I think
um,
initially people maybe have thought Concord, but as time's gone on, it just hasn't seemed that way.
is Concord the ramen one?
Concord is the one that is speed 0. You still get to spend a defense token. Um,
Oh yeah, I mean that's it's fine, I guess. But like the number of situations that you actually want, be it speed zero, are not high, and especially if you can still only spend. Is it you can only spend one
you can
still?
only spend one, and it also locks.
I yeah, broadly, yeah, just Concord seems fine, but the extra redirect is for me more useful than the extra salvo as well.
Yeah.
Especially because Concord's 2 points more expensive for some reason.
Well, I suppose it was the whole gimmick that they had going on. I suppose
But
that was the plan of.
um, so
Um,
uh, So for my money, Concord, it's more expensive than Unity, and I think the second redirect is just more valuable, particularly when comboed with expert shield techs, because that just makes it gives you so much anti-squadron defense, and if you're not running like a full 134, which I don't love with a Starhawk, but that's because I like four activations. And you can't realistically get 134 squadrons and four activations in the same list. So yeah, I Concord seems more like a gimmick than anything else to
Yeah.
me.
And like that's the other thing. You're like normally where you've got the Hawk as the main heavy lifter and you've got Magnites, people are going with the 134. But if we look at your squadron wing, um, it's fairly defensive. With the five A wings and one YT 2400.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, two of those A wings are Shara and Tycho, who are probably 3 points undercosted on both of them, just because of four health scat race,
yep,
particularly with counter. It's so obnoxious to kill. Unless you're Sloan, because then they just die in two attacks, and that's it. But Sloan does Sloan things.
yep,
Um, the Magnites on the Starhawk's actually something I kind of go back and forth on because like I have 3 games in a row where they kind of don't really do anything. Then I'll have one game where they win me the game, and I'm like, right, okay, no, I'm keeping this. Like, this
yep.
is worth keeping, you know?
And I mean, I suppose it doesn't have to work 100% of the time, as well as that you never know what kind of how your opponent's decisions get altered by simply by the fact you have it.
Yeah, that's the thing. It forces people to not to nav more often and to make sure they have a nav token. And sometimes you just use it to like randomly slow something down, and they have to spend a nav token, and you're like, well, they had to spend a resource, and I didn't really. So there's a little bit of trade there where it went in my favor. So we can kind of play with that as well. But it doesn't, and it's also a big deterrent from people giving you first.
Yep,
Because if you can last first them with the Starhawk, they die. Like if you can go last to the Starhawk, drop something to 0, go first with it and kill it, then it just dies because you get to roll. If you double arc, you get to roll 13 dice with no defense tokens.
and it,
Which I was just gonna say, which doesn't happen often because people don't let it happen, but they have to play around that it could happen. You know?
yep, and you have four activations where a lot of fleets are just running the three. So if you can
Yeah,
take out something small, then it does set up the first last if people aren't careful,
yeah,
which is good. And I suppose you also want second a lot of the time with Starhawks because
yeah. I think the Starhawk wants to go second because otherwise people can just make you chase them all game, and that's pretty bad. Like I want one of my objectives to either contested outpost or doom station I can get points off of if you don't engage with me. And sure, you can take advanced gunnery, but that just guarantees that if you give me second and you take advanced gunnery and you run away, then sure, I'll take a 6-5 win. It sucks, but fine.
yep. So that and I suppose as soon as you're forced into doing something against the Starhawk, you have to either finish it or finish everything around it, and you don't really get to split your fire most of the time until one of those two things are. You don't get to split your fire, and if you split your focus at all, you're not achieving one of those two things. But
It's something that when you're playing Starhawk, you have to kind of recognize fairly early in the game whether your opponent is even going to try and kill it. Because if they're not, obviously you can start dialing in like confires or whatever later in the game rather than repairs. Um, and it also lets you, if your opponent is like putting fire that could have gone into the Starhawk into your other stuff on like turn 3 or 4, then you're like, right, I can be more aggressive with the Starhawk and I can like bully people with it, um, rather than holding it back in a more kind of defensive situation.
yeah, and it is a bit of a bully. It just you look at it, you look at the size, you go, that's never reaching me. It dials in a nav command, and oh wait, why is it in my back garden?
Yeah, because it's hard. I mean, like with the nav dial on speed two, it's got 3 clicks on speed two, which is ridiculous for a ship of its size. Like it really shouldn't have 2 clicks at speed two. Like that is
Nope.
that's something that it shouldn't have.
These
Um, but yeah, I don't know. Like it's a powerful ship, but I see a lot of the top players are running lists that against the Starhawk they will basically just go around it and are like their lists are built to go in, kill everything else, and
Yep.
just sort of ignore the Starhawk as they fly around it. And you've got a 200-point ship stuck in the middle of the board that's like shooting a few reds at people as they fly past it.
Yep, it can be a bit frustrating. All right. Anyway, we had the final on the channel, and you had said to me beforehand you'd never played an SSD before. Do you want to talk about how that particular match went?
Yeah, so going in, I did a lot of like theory in my head, to the point where I couldn't sleep one night because I was running through like like okay, so if he does this, then I do this, and I couldn't sleep for like an hour one night because it was stuck in my head. But I basically theoried it out, and I was like, I want to keep everything in one arc because that way he only gets 2 shots. Because effectively, if anything is in a different arc than that one arc, he's getting a free shot every turn, whereas he can only shoot twice out of one arc with the gunnery teams. Um, so I was like, if he gives me first, I'm fine because I just get a double arc with the Starhawk, and then I have more activation, so I drop it to 0 when I kill it. Because even the SSD can't handle like the amount of fire I can put out, and the Starhawk wants to just sit in because the Starhawk loves taking one big hit a turn, right? Because you can brace, you can expert shield tech, and even like 12 damage goes down to 5. You're like, okay, fine. I've still got shields on my front, you know. So I figured I could if I could double arc it with my squadrons and with Jaina's Light, I figured I could take it down in a head-on fight. Um, it would be close, but I didn't really see another option because I needed to. All I need, like, I needed like an 8 point win to secure the tournament, to guarantee the tournament. And so my only other option, if he gives me second, the problem is he picks an objective that could give him points. So it's not like I can run away and take a 6-5 and just
Yep.
try and not, try and kind of hope that's enough. So I pretty much have to go head on. But luckily, the Agate Starhawk is something that can go head on into an SSD and not and will take like 4 or 5 turns to die. And meanwhile, if I'm double arcing him, I'm hitting him back just as hard.
Even a little bit
Um,
harder with the salvo.
yeah, like with the salvo, although I wasn't really counting on ever getting to do the salvo because he's always going to roll. Well, he's always going to intel officer one of the braces, and if he gets at least one accuracy, which he will, because he's got 10 dice if he uses a con fire. So he's going to get one accuracy for the other brace, and then if he gets a second accuracy, that goes on the salvo. So I was like, I maybe get to salvo once, maybe twice over the course of the game. Was what happened, but it does add up, and because I've also got my squadrons, which are throwing out an average of 4 damage ish a turn, and Jaina's Light, which hits much harder than it has any right to for a ship of its points. I was kind of doing the math, and I was like, I think I can take him in that head-on fight. Ragnar actually did the same maths, I think, because in I set that up where in the game I was double arcing him. He had everything in my list in his front arc, and he was like obviously deciding whether to just start like ramming the Starhawk and just sit there and just double arc. He did the math and was like, I can't win this fight. Like he's going to win this fight if I let this fight happen the way he wants it to. So he tried to kind of turn around and double arc the Starhawk, and he didn't quite get the double arc with his side and his front on the Starhawk, and now the Starhawk's in his side. So he kills Jaina's next turn because now Jaina's in like close range and or medium range and just died. But I had a Starhawk in his side arc, double arcing him, and now because he only had his side arc on the Starhawk was never going to die. Like it was just not going to die at all.
And I think
Um,
the first hit into his side was a massive one. I think you locked down all the tokens and did like 8
I think
damage
that
straight
was
through.
the second hit because that was turn 4. I think was the one where I locked down both braces and his contain because he'd had to discard one contain already for whatever reason. And so yeah, locked both braces in the contain and got a crit and like 5 damage through to his hull, and that put him on like 3 hull. And I've been ramming him as well, and because the Starhawk wasn't in danger, I could just safely be ramming him to get that extra damage card every turn. So yeah, it was uh, it was still close and it's still scary because it's a huge thing. Like it's so intimidating to see on the table the SSD. And particularly when he's rolling dice pools of like 10 dice, you're like, oh my god, okay, that's a lot.
Yep.
Like, but yeah, I kind of theoried it out, and the game played out roughly according to my theory. I didn't quite see how good it could turn though, because JJ just makes that thing turn so good.
Yeah. I
Um,
got caught by the same trick when he met me in the rounds and he just annihilated me. Because
yeah.
I did not think he was turning that fast, and suddenly he was like, "Oh, I'm over
Well,
here now, and you're dead."
well, it's also interesting because it turns unlike any other ship in the game because it turns from the middle. So the combination of JJ and turning from the middle actually makes it much harder to predict where it's going to end up compared to any other ship in the game. Because if he, like when I had him double arced and in his front arc, no other ship in the game could have made the turn that he made at that point.
Yep.
Like any other large in the game would have just been stuck ramming me until one of us died. But he could actually get out of that or try and like turn and get around. It's kind of a really interesting thing about it. The way it turns is very unique, and I quite like that about it. But yeah, so it was a super good game though. Despite anyone who's watched it, there was a ton of lag. Like I was really struggling because everything I was doing was on a delay. I had to like plan that like what I was clicking now was actually going to get clicked in like 3 or 4 seconds.
Yeah.
So it was a bit frustrating, but we figured it out. And Ragnar's a really nice guy. Like we had
Yeah.
a good game. It was fun.
Lovely opponent altogether. But yeah, no, listen, thanks for taking us through the list and thanks for taking us through the final. Sure, hopefully we'll have you on again soon sometime. But yeah, thank you so much, Bryce. A thousand
No,
eyes, the Hoth tournament winner. Sorry, you were going to say?
I was just going to say thanks for having me on. Sorry, I think I rambled a lot there. I'm sorry.
Everyone does on this channel, and there's no need to apologize. I think this is the rambling channel. I think they had me on Steel Squadron, and they were like, we were doing the card reviews, and it was like, yeah, we've got to move along now. We've got to move along now. We've got. I was like, every card I wanted to spend 20 minutes talking about, and they were like, yeah, we'd like to keep this under 5 hours. It is 2 o'clock in the morning for you, James. That they didn't say that, but that was the impression that they would have liked me to have got some sleep that night. So hence they were trying to speed it along. But listen, it's been a
Yeah,
pleasure, and sure we'll have you on again soon. Thanks very much.
awesome. Catch you later, buddy.